Well, welcome everyone to this webinar from the Open Group, which today I'm very pleased to say is being brought to us in conjunction with Nationwide Insurance. For those of you that have attended our webinars before, I think you'll be used to hearing some really good advice from consultants, organisations, and we often get requests for some practical insight into how end user organisations are actually implementing their EA strategies and addressing some of their EA challenges. So I'm really pleased that we've got Michael Fulton and Zahid Hussain today from Nationwide Insurance who will be doing just that. Before I hand over to today's speakers, I'd just like to go over a few housekeeping issues to keep the event moving forward smoothly. Firstly, with regards to questions, and of course we would encourage you to ask questions. The best way to answer a question today is to write your question in the text QA facility. If you do write a question in there, can I ask you to address it to all or all participants? That way everyone gets to see all the questions that have been submitted. And our intention is to try and answer as many questions as we can at the end of today's presentation. Now, today's event is being fully recorded, so if for any reason you have to leave early or you experience any local technical difficulties, then a full recording will be available tomorrow, and everyone who has registered will get an email with a link to where they can access that recording. So, Zahid and your team, if you're ready, can I ask you to start today's presentation?
Sure. We'll actually start with Michael Fulton.
Great. Welcome, everyone. I appreciate you taking the time to join us on our webinar today. I will be sharing with you a brief overview about Nationwide, and then we're going to hand it over to Zahid, who is going to walk us through the EA practice here at Nationwide and how we use enterprise architecture to drive better business cases for our executives using EA-driven KPIs. So we'll talk a little bit about KPIs. We'll go through some examples, and Zahid will share some lessons that we've learned here at Nationwide as part of our journey. So really excited to tell the story to you today. Let's go ahead and jump right into just a little bit about Nationwide. For those of you that don't know, Nationwide is one of the largest insurance providers in the United States, but we're a lot more than just insurance. Nationwide actually has three primary lines of business. We do insurance, both personal and commercial insurance. We do financial services, and we do banking. We are the number one small business insurer in the U.S. We are the largest pet insurer in the U.S. We're the number one provider of insurance to farms and ranches. And we're also the number one on the financial services side, the number one provider of public sector retirement plans. Nationwide is in a lot of places that you might not think of us if you're familiar with our brand and our jingle. We are on your side, but we're on your side for every piece of what you do as an individual and as a business owner. Nationwide's also been recognized widely as a top place to work, both as a company in general and within IT. We have been on the Computer World Great Places to Work in IT list for 5 years running now. So very, very proud of that here. It's a wonderful company and a great culture. As I mentioned, we've got a diverse portfolio of different things that we offer, financial services, banking, and of course insurance. The scope and scale of what we deal with here at Nationwide is a little bit unique. We do have over $1 billion of annual IT spend, and we do support over 30,000 employees with, as you can see, 35,000 plus endpoints from a PC perspective. We have 9,000 total in our IT workforce at this point. Right now, we're looking at about a two-thirds split in-house. That's fairly significantly different than a lot of companies who have moved to an outsourcing model. We still do an awful lot of our IT work strategically in-house here at Nationwide. So that's pretty exciting and one of the reasons why we're a great place to work in IT. Now, over the years, Nationwide has been a very close relationship with the Open Group. We're a gold member of the Open Group and have been for a number of years. We're also deeply involved with the Architecture Forum, the IT for IT Forum, as well as the Open Platform Forum on the Open Group. We're former leadership roles within the Architecture Forum with some of our Nationwide members that have been vice chairs, and then I personally currently vice chair the IT for IT Forum. So with that brief introduction, I want to turn it over to Zahid, who leads up our enterprise architecture capability here at Nationwide, and let him share a little bit of our EA story.
Thank you, Mike. So just briefly, what we do as a enterprise architecture team at Nationwide. We have a large number of architects, both business and IT. We call the business architect business consultants. So our overall, you can think of us as a capability team and enabling team. So one of the key services that we provide is the architecture skill development, whether about TOGAF or architecture best practices to how to model and adopt enterprise architecture, specifically in a very distributed environment. Second thing that we do is also responsible for managing the modeling of architecture across our plan, build, run landscape. So that's current state, target state, all the transition architectures, as well as we call it city plan. It's really our futuristic view of what IT is going to look like in our, almost like a nirvana state, if you would. We also provide, as we utilize really our architecture repository and architecture processes to provide insights and decision support across, again, for any architecture change management, if you will. So, for example, you look into, we're trying to grow a certain business, or we have certain set of slowness and complexity in some part of the business. Are we fast enough in responding to business needs? So those kind of analysis all from enterprise architecture based analysis and data and KPIs. So we'll talk about that. We also provide a lot of governance around architecture repository, reference models, and I'll share some of that with you as well, and standards. Now, the way we do is, this is really based on 4 key foundational capabilities that are required for us to enable all of these at Nationwide. So number 1 is the Metamodel is kind of central to Nationwide, specifically given our different portfolios of business, different portfolios of IT. We needed to have a common language for us to describe our enterprise. And that has been one of the biggest roadblocks for us to be able to share and collaborate with each other, just because we did not have we are not able to communicate effectively. And the second problem was that as we do all the architecture work across Nationwide, not speaking the same language and not being able to describe it in a common language, it would become very difficult to digitize the information base. So the first key is the Metamodel, and the second thing that we do is a digitized architecture repository. We have been using Abacus for last little over 2 years now to really store all of our data, as well as use Abacus as an architecture management repository and tool. Third thing is, the architectural thinking. So I think one of the key things that we have learned is that, as you probably all know, is that being able to ask the right question is often more important than having the answer to the question. And as we look through our architectural landscape, the business and IT landscape, again and again, I think the question is, can we understand the questions well enough, and can we ask the right set of questions, and then figure out a way to get the answer and following a process to get the answer. And that brings us to the architecture development method. Though we utilize a lot of big aspects of ADM at Nationwide, but we do have some internal business transformation process that we follow that conceptually it's a very similar idea. So those are the four key capabilities that are needed for us to do all the work that we do. The two key goals that we have is that as we create architecture models, if you can think of a city plan, you do different projects, but your city plan always stays current, and also it represents what the city may look in the future. Our goal is to, as we do all this different work and analysis and modeling work, we want to make sure that the data is just current, coherent, and that can be used across in the future as well. It does not die with a specific project. So specifically, uses from an Abacus point of view, in Abacus, as well as a lot of the visualization, both from the diagramming, reporting, as well as graphs and dashboards. We have been doing a lot of those out of Abacus. Another big thing that we have been doing is, I'll talk about this a little bit later about the KPIs. How do we do the calculate KPIs? But he has been using Abacus to write all the algorithms to provide KPIs and sometimes insights on all the data that we have in our repository. We have been also harvesting a lot of operational data like CMDB and HR to really bring those data sets into our repository to provide better context. And of course, there is about more than 300 business and IT architects that contribute to creating parts of the models across business units or different IT departments, and all the data are kept into one single repository. What Abacus is also allowing us to help do this, I did draw this picture to kind of show you how we manage our architecture. So on the left side, you can see that baseline architecture that represents current state. And we started that by really, you can think of, as you see in TOGA, there's 3 levels of architecture: enterprise, segment, and capability. And we really maintain the current state data at the lowest level of granularity so that we can have a lot more insight, but we also use that lowest level data to really create views at the enterprise and the segment level. And then when it comes to transition architecture, that's more of the work that we do across all the different projects and programs that we run. And there really we start with the segment level and really during the execution project execution, we put additional details about the capability level. And finally, when we really plan for the future, we only look into at enterprise level and the segment level. And again, I think that the nice thing is that what Abacus is allowing us to do is connect all these 3 architectures, and we are able to do gap analysis between transition architecture and the baseline architecture and target architecture to really between any architectures. So that's one of the really key strengths, and you'll see that in our future plans how we are able to utilize this continuum, if you will, to utilize a lot of the content that gets created in plan that gets going to build, and then from the build to run. Okay. This is a picture that we create a view catalog. Those of you that are familiar with SOGAS a view catalog, that I would say was not working really well for us. So what we did was really from a use case perspective, how we use our repository. So we came up with these four sets of view groups of viewpoints. So one was really around architecture modeling, how do you create architecture content, and the second one was more about for you us to be able to understand and analyze the architecture itself. So impact, interaction, and gap analysis. We also provide a lot of viewpoints that allows us to do run environment analysis as we are making target architecture decisions. And finally, architecture governance and change management. So there is two things you do: change management as well as compliance analysis. Like in change management, we would do architecture decisions, work product generation, and compliance analysis is sometimes, for example, can you do how compliant are you with the technology standards? So that's kind of a summary of what we do from a EA team and the kind of services that we provide. Now, let's talk briefly about key performance indicators. This is an example of how we look into our key performance indicators. And we just did not just look at the one set of data. We really, I think, you have to really start from the top. Key goal indicator. So, for example, if you're in this case, if you run a coffee shop and your goal is to reduce cost, so what is the key success factor is operational success of the coffee shop, and that way the performance indicator for that would be the efficiency and quality. Now, you may ask why quality may be important, and I'll show you. And if you go one step down, you'll see that drink satisfaction rate. Well, the drink satisfaction rate is driven from how many drinks you're having to remake because customers were not satisfied. So we really try to look at a top-down view because as you look in your architecture landscape, there is so much data out there, and there is so many things that all of us feel are important. So it's very important that we look into look the KPIs and metrics and data from a top-down point of view rather than bottom up. So this is another example of what we did for our next set of slides that I'm going to go through. Our our ask was somebody, the nationwide board came and asked us, most of the key success factors. So they came and asked us, okay, hey, I don't know the health of all the IT that runs my business, or the cost, and what is the business impact of this kind of applications that you have. So we actually had to go back and kind of ask what is the key goal. So we went up and started. I think main goal was to have investment transparency, reduce risk, and where we have opportunities for simplification. As you can see, this down, we have key metrics like application age, run cost, and then in the KPM performance metric, we have cost per function, transaction time, those kind of things. So let's move on to an example, and I'll walk you through a lot more of that data as we run through this. So we'll walk you through the one example, business IT transformation for simplification and complexity management. Back in 2000, about 3 years ago, Nationwide board, Nationwide has, as Mike mentioned earlier, we spent about $1.2 billion in IT, and more than 66% of that budget is spend for run. That means just to keep the lights on. And lot from, just to give a little context of our nationwide board members, they're mostly farmers, and they really do not understand IT. And a lot of our business leaders and the board feel that, analogy would be you're sitting at the airport, you're paying $6 for a Coke. Uh, you know that you're spending that much money, but you really don't know what true value you're getting out of it, except for that is necessary evil. Uh, so our first goal was to ask us to, can you explain why we are spending money in business terms? Second thing is that, can IT be optimized to reduce cost? Um, and then the second part is, of course, IT supports a lot of our critical business functions. Question is, what are the health and cost of those assets? And is there any IT enablement gap? For example, IT could have done better, but how do we identify those areas where we should invest more money to better support our critical business processes? And how do we prioritize those? So with that, one of the things that I do want to provide a little context about our Metamodel, how we used it to kind of take that question and how do we answer those questions, and how do we start approaching this problem. So as you can see in our Metamodel, we have quite a few sections called, one is strategy architecture, business architecture, application data technology, and governance and change management. And so one of the key things that we identified is the capabilities. Capabilities are really the building blocks of Nationwide's business. And so everybody understands claims, everybody understands billing, everybody understands sales or policy management. So we really wanted to look into our IT from business capability point of view, and it became kind of a linchpin for all our discussions and all the data that we collected. So let me just add it. So one of the first things for us was to identify what the key components in our enterprise that is going to help us answer this question. And so capability, different organization units need, and different functions that we have within the organization unit, and applications and the infrastructure that they run in. So we had 3 KPIs that we're looking for: IT health, business importance, and IT run cost. Now the problem is that IT run cost is relatively complex, because you pay for infrastructure separately, you pay for your people separately, you pay for your licenses separately, and they're always not, all of them are not necessarily built for one specific capability. So what we did, agreed that we are going to utilize the capability model to identify where and how we are going to represent this metric. So, for example, this picture that you see here is our capability model, the core capability part of our capability model, and you can see it has been highlighted based on its health and your IT health. Now, this kind of picture is still a little bit too much for our board members to consume. So we started, I'll show you what our final outcome looked like, but this really became our starting point for us to start collecting the KPIs. So let's look at the KPIs a little bit more detail. So now that our capability model is the key where we're going to capture all the KPIs, 3 big things, right? One is the technical health, is the other part is the cost, and the third part is the business importance. Business importance, really, we broke it down into few different parts. One is the strategic importance and operational importance. Strategic importance means the capability that help us grow, and operational importance is the areas that really help you run your business smoothly. The desired IT enablement and desired IT criticality. That means it may be a very business critical capability, but IT may or may not play a critical role in that specific capability. Other part is the cost. As you can see that there is 4 types of cost that we talked about earlier. You have to bring it back up to the capability level. And then the technical health, you can see there is tons of data around your application infrastructure, but we did have to come up with, we have to simplify that and represent that in a overall health of that application suite that supports that that capability. So those are the 3 key key factors. Now let's dive into this at least one of the areas. Let's look at the IT health calculation. As you can see that you have all the infrastructure level data, we pull them up at the application level. Then we really use algorithms to calculate the overall health of an application. So there is about 12 fact metrics that went into calculating the overall health of an application. Now, the application supports different functions, and those functions are, so we distribute that application health to the function. Specifically, a lot of the function is supported by more than one application. So we use again the algorithms to calculate the distribute the application health on the functions. And I think one of the key factors here from functions, then we're going to do the same thing to calculate the overall health of the capability. Now, the facts are facts. You can change them. For example, if an application has 10 defects a month, that's a fact. But I think one of the key things that we used the algorithm as dials. So we were really, there is no magic formula that we could apply. It was more of trial and error to utilize and identifying which fact is more important, which one should be given more weight, and what is the implications of that. So we really utilized that as a way for us to adjust the algorithm, and that really provided us a very flexible way of bringing different perspectives and highlighting different concerns without having to create and recreate data again and again. Similar thing for our calculation of cost. As you can see that the way you distribute health is very different than how you distribute cost, because at the end cost has to add up to the total number of IT spent. However, in the case of health, you saw that if an application is a bad health, all the capabilities that application support is in bad health. So algorithm-wise, it's quite different how we calculated that. Finally, the business importance. Business importance data is, we collected that data. Actually, this data is part of our functions because we had different business functions for different business sectors, and it can be the same business capability, but it may be of different importance to different business sectors. So therefore, we utilize the business functions and rolled it up again into the capability level. So with this, you can see that some of the sample output that we came up with. Remember, earlier I showed you this whole capability model and tried to highlight what needs attention. But that was still too complex. So we thought a 2x2 may do the magic, and it actually did. You can see that in this diagram on the left side, what you have is um, strategic importance, and the right side you have the IT enablement gap. And you can see this from a investment point of view. You have to look into CRM, product development, and product pricing. However, from a operational importance point of view, you can see that billing and collection and policy management is one of the two big areas that requires attention. Now, I think for high-level communication with the board and the IT, the business executives, this level of data makes a lot of sense. The key is that once we say, okay, great, we want to invest in billing and collection, what is the next steps that we take? And I think we need to be able to still keep the connection, and as we start making specific decisions, how and what problems are we going to solve. So let's look into the simplification, and let's take billing and collection. So this one specifically shows, as you can see, a lot of the details here. Billing and collection capability, you have on the top is the function duplication complexity and application scattered index. So this is, again, we use some algorithms to calculate how many different applications are providing supporting a single capability, or how many different business organizations are managing or have different sets of processes and functions to support the billing and collection capability. And two ways for you to simplify. One is that standardization. So, for example, when you have the business function variability, you simplify by standardization. And when you have scattered applications, you simplify by consolidation. And this is just one of the approaches that we took, and we have, in fact, based on this analysis, we have large transformation programs that are on its way to simplify some of these capabilities. Now, I think as we make further go down, we created these kind of dashboards for both IT and business leaders to see a lot more details about specific capabilities. You can see the billing and collection. You can identify exactly which applications support them, which applications have high health score, low health score. So this kind of, again, provide you a lot more traceability as well as details for you have whether when somebody has a very specific question, when they look up in the higher level data, as well as you start making more and more finer grained decisions throughout the process. This is another view that we create out of Abacus. You can see that this is a capability. You can find more and applications. And in this case, you can see the specific applications, their overall health score, and then you can also see, a lot of additional age, how much it costs to run, those kind of information. Again, there is so many. Once you create the model, your view and kind of analysis that you can do is limitless, and that sometimes may be a bad thing. But if you are able to standardize on few of the views, that is very helpful. In our case, it has been really, really, it's definitely not been an easy journey. What would make sense to our leadership is we have really iterated through many, many, many times. And this is kind of one of the final outcomes that you can say, the business cases that we built out of our metrics. As you can see that this is one page summary for each area, if you can think of it that way. So in the inside, we not only show these graphs, but also summarize with few bullet points saying these are the few things for you to be concerned about, as well as we identify some opportunities for example, billing and collections, again, for an example. What is the application look like? And of course, we also utilize the complexity analysis metrics to understand the impact, duration, and potential investment needed, and kind of cost savings you may get by making that investment. I have a few more examples, and I think I have some sample dollar figures and durations in this one as well. You can see that from run cost analysis point of view, you can say if we did billing and collection modernization, you could save quite a bit of money over the year. So in this case, it's really discussion about this is the investment, this is the outcome, and this is the time frame that we might be looking into getting things done. So decision making becomes a lot more hopefully simpler and easier. But a lot important part is that when the decision is made at the higher level, can we trace it back to as we do start making further finer grain decision as we go through plan, build, and the run space. And I think our enterprise architecture repository is really allowing us to just do that. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Okay. So this is another example of key insights. You can see that in this case, we did not really put a graph, but we talked about in a simple just bullet points again, but the business empowerment and IT enablement gap, and what is the kind of things that we can do. Just as we walk through this example, one word of caution that this is, I had to fake a lot of this data, so it may not be very coherent, but hopefully I wanted to present this for you to give an idea what kind of data point may make sense and what kind of description may make sense to represent with your leadership team.
To be clear, we don't fake this data internally. He is faking this data for this presentation for public consumption. Just so we're clear.
Correct. Okay, so let's talk about a few things that we learned over the process. One of the first things that I think we learned is we build model incrementally. If you don't have a model in place right now, build it incrementally. And also utilize any data that you may or may not have, take advantage of your operational data sources or any other data source. It may not be perfect, but it may give you a really good start. And I know that we also had a lot of discussions, a lot of complaints about data accuracy, and we have always said, is it good enough? I think that are we directionally correct? Otherwise, you get into this big analysis paralysis situation, and you start completely derail your discussion from getting an answer to, oh, the data sucks. Don't focus on process governance, focus on outcomes. Specifically, as we have this discussion, we never brought up enterprise architecture and even to our business partner. It is more about, what kind of outcome, what kind of answers they are looking for, and really coming back and applying all our engineering and science into creating the right set of model so that we can answer the questions and reuse for the next time. Again, I think as we went through this this journey, and we continue to do all the new set of work that we're doing, we are continuously compromising on process because at the end of the day, a process is a way for you to achieve a goal, and so we have definitely. For example, I was talking about earlier ADM. We are not really following ADM as such, but as long as the fundamental aspirations of ADM are met, we are good. while short-term success is important, stay focused on long-term sustainability and the value creation. So one of the things that we continuously found that when there is a big pressure to provide an answer, and we spend time thinking, that we are getting the answer quickly, but we end up, as soon as you give an answer, you're going to ask 10 more questions. So what we mean is that anytime we create any answer, make sure that you have modeled your information correctly, so that second time same question is or different question is asked, you can utilize the data set to answer second set of questions. We almost use the analogy of the Google Maps. It does not store any specific answer to your questions, but it stores all the data, model the data, and anytime we ask a question, there is algorithms for it to give you the answer. So we try to follow the same method here. And one thing that I have almost religiously tried to do is not compromise about the underlying model. So what I mean by this is, as you work with different partners within IT and business, everybody want to come and change your underlying model because that helps them see what they want to see very quickly. What we wanted to make sure that we represent we follow all the principles and represent the data in the right place and create views for them to answer their questions. And sometimes that may be difficult conversations, but that is something that we have really tried, spend a lot of time explaining to them how we can provide them the right views to them without compromising the model. And again, compromise on customized views. As you can see that we went through many iterations of creating many different views unless something resonated with people. And one of the things that we found very interesting is this: a view may be very intriguing to one set of executives. It may completely not be liked by some other executives. So we keep a lot of additional viewpoints in our back pocket so that we can, again, there is no question about, oh, this doesn't answer my question. If you have a question, I think we can answer your question. Common language, as I mentioned earlier, is very important. Okay. Do not overreach. Allow variation by context. So what I mean by this is, a lot of times yes, we want to achieve a common language, but you'll see that there's a lot of places in the organization they use a very local language, and that is your enterprise level, a common language that you created is almost meaningless in that context. For example, if you're a claims organization, a claimant may be very important, but if you're in the sales organization, you may call them prospect. So don't try to impose something called party or some other very generic word to describe them. Allow those kind of variability in your model, and this is exactly what we did. So the same data, when we represent to, let's say, for claims, it becomes claimant, but you represent it for sales, it becomes prospect. So those kind of context is very important. And again, the last but not least is that there's so much data, then all seems so important. So goal is to quantify and prioritize, and be practical. You have to really fight the battle with the army that you have. So a lot of times we are like, we wish we had this data, but it's just not there. Question is there an alternative to the data set that you have that will help you answer the same question? With that, I'll hand it over to Michael Fulton again to kind of talk about the next steps.
Yeah. So one of the things I really appreciate about this process here that we've shared with you today is the way that everything hangs together. from the top level, most strategic viewpoint or views to the detailed views at the execution and operations level. To me, that's incredibly valuable, and one of the powers of really having a well thought out, well thought through enterprise architecture, and really, as he mentioned, adhering to the model, adhering to your meta model, and making sure that all the pieces hang together. What that really does for us is, as an executive, when I see some of the content coming out of the EA practice, I have confidence that the next level of detail is there. If I need to drill in on a specific area as we're developing our strategies, we know that we've got the next level of detail there to answer the question. And that's, in my experience, having worked with a number of other companies in the EA space, that's something that's fairly unique, and I really appreciate about the practice here. I think that one of the things that is important is, to me, being able to make sure that the goals and objectives of the senior leadership of the company tie back through that KPI model that we talked about all the way down to the operational metrics that are used to drive the day-to-day. That is incredibly valuable and strategic, and really helps drive the business forward most effectively. So that's the benefits I see out of this whole process as one of the executives here at Nationwide. I think all of the time investments that we've put into connecting all this from top to bottom really continues to pay off for us as we go through our strategic planning cycles.
So Zahid and Tim and Michael, if you're all happy today, are you happy to finish, or are there any final comments you'd like to make just before I end?
I just appreciate the opportunity, and all the best.
Okay, well, that's great. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. Thank you for your time given today's presentation, and I'll now end today's presentation. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.